The cameras flash. The crowd outside is like absolutely roaring. You are standing backstage at this monumental history-making event, and the person you've trusted for over 2 decades has just gotten down on one knee to ask you to spend the rest of your life with them.
It's the ultimate high.
Exactly. You're surrounded by your family, completely enveloped in this legacy that has defined your entire existence. For a brief, shining moment, you are at the absolute summit of your life.
It really is the ultimate Hollywood ending. But what happens when, just days later, the ground beneath that summit completely collapses?
Leaving you in a sudden, terrifying freefall.
Yeah.
Welcome to Starscope Report, where we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today's deep dive is taking on a story that has absolutely dominated the headlines.
It really has. Today we're looking at why Kelly Osbourne just canceled the wedding. We are unpacking the really abrupt and honestly heartbreaking end of Kelly's engagement to Slipknot DJ Sid Wilson.
Right, and if you're looking for standard celebrity gossip, you're in the wrong place today.
Yeah, totally.
Our mission for this deep dive is to figure out the actual mechanics of what happens when the profound joy of building a new family crashes head-on into the suffocating grief of losing a parent.
Because it's a deeply human story. To get a clear picture of all this, we've pulled together a pretty massive stack of reporting.
Yeah, lots of sources on this one.
We're looking at timelines and insider accounts from TMZ, Us Weekly, The Mirror, and Tyla.
And our goal is really to cut through all the sensationalism, right? To understand the underlying human psychology of this split.
Because the biggest question everyone is asking right now is, why?
Right.
And to even begin answering that, we have to recognize that this was not some, fleeting overnight romance that just buckled under the first sign of pressure.
No, not at all.
We are talking about a foundation that took nearly a quarter of a century to build. We have to rewind all the way back to 1999.
1999, which, that is when Kelly and Sid first crossed paths. Sid's band, the heavy metal group Slipknot, was touring with Ozfest.
Right.
And it's crucial to understand the environment of Ozfest. It wasn't just some random summer music festival.
Oh, definitely not.
It was this entire traveling ecosystem founded by Kelly's parents, Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne. It was essentially the family business.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because growing up inside the Ozfest ecosystem is, it's a highly unique experience.
To say the least.
Right. It's chaotic, it's loud, and it's deeply insular. Finding a genuine connection in that kind of environment is incredibly rare.
Absolutely.
Usually a 23-year friendship forged in that kind of fire is, well, it's like building a house on solid bedrock. You aren't just infatuated with some PR-polished version of a person. You know their actual flaws. You've seen them at their absolute worst.
Yeah. Which makes the relationship incredibly stable once it starts.
Exactly. So if the foundation was that incredibly strong, what kind of earthquake does it actually take to bring the house down?
It's a really compelling way to look at it.
Yeah.
Because for over 2 decades, they maintained that bedrock. They navigated the treacherous waters of the music industry, the immense public scrutiny, purely as close friends.
Yeah.
And when they finally did make that transition from friends to romantic partners, they didn't exactly tiptoe into it. They went all in.
I really want to look closely at that transition, because you'd think jumping from a 23-year friendship to a romance would be, I don't know, awkward.
Yeah.
Or fraught with hesitation.
Usually, yeah.
But looking at their hard launch in early 2022, it seems almost aggressively natural.
Oh, completely.
Like, in January of that year, Kelly took a trip to Ireland. She documented the whole thing online, and there's this wildly specific detail where she's walking around a foreign country carrying a massive screen-printed pillow of Sid's face.
I remember that.
Yeah, and her caption was, "Everywhere I go, I take my baby with me."
It's just a fascinating detail because it highlights a complete lack of pretense.
Right.
You do not carry a giant novelty pillow of your partner's face in public unless you are completely deeply secure in that bond.
You really don't.
It shows a level of comfort and playfulness that usually takes couples years to achieve, but they already had it built in.
Then she doubles down. She posted a quote tagging Sid that read, "And so there's this boy, and the way he laughs makes me smile. and the way he talks gives me butterflies, and everything about him makes me happy.
Wow.
To me, that sounds like pure, unfiltered infatuation, but it's layered over this massive history of trust. And by the way, if you are loving how we break down the psychology behind these high-profile relationships, make sure you are subscribed to our feed, because we've got even crazier stories ahead.
We really do. And that infatuation, it culminated very publicly. For Valentine's Day in February 2022, they made it official.
The actual confirmation.
Right. Kelly posted a photo of them kissing, calling him her best friend, her soulmate, and stating she was deeply in love. And Sid matched her intensity. He posted that there weren't enough colors to display the palette of love he had for her.
That's so poetic.
Yeah, the momentum was just building rapidly.
It really was a runaway train in the best way possible. By May 2022, they announced they're expecting.
Huge news.
And then November, they welcomed their son, Sidney Wilson Jr. And I just love the way they integrated their new family unit into the Osbourne legacy.
Oh, the swaddle.
Yes. Just a few months later, Kelly shares a photo of baby Sidney wearing a black swaddle with bat wings and ears.
It's such a brilliant, dark humor nod to her father's infamous stage antic.
Which perfectly demonstrates how deeply intertwined their future was with her family's past. They weren't breaking away to start something new. They were basically building an extension of the Osbourne legacy.
Exactly. And that momentum brings us to the absolute peak of the timeline, July 2025.
Right. After more than 2 years as a couple and after adjusting to parenthood, Sid finally proposes.
And the execution of this proposal is just staggering. He does it backstage at Ozzy's final Black Sabbath concert in Birmingham.
The symbolism there is so dense.
It really is. Birmingham is the birthplace of Black Sabbath. This concert is Ozzy's final bow. It is the definitive closing of a massive chapter for the patriarch of the family.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, it's the opening of a massive new chapter for his daughter.
And the details of how it went down are just perfectly chaotic. According to the sources, Sid asks Ozzy for permission in front of everyone.
Brave man.
Right. And Ozzy, entirely in character as the Prince of Darkness, hilariously barks back, "F off, you're not marrying my daughter."
Which is just so Ozzy.
Yeah.
But Sid knows Ozzy well enough to know that isn't a real rejection.
No, it's a test.
Right, it's a test of character. He understands the family dynamic.
Yeah.
So he pushes right through the joke, turns to Kelly, and tells her nothing would make him happier than spending the rest of his life with her.
Oh, wow.
Kelly is stunned, but she says yes. It is a genuine rock and roll fairy tale.
It is. But wait till you hear what came next, because this is where the fairy tale violently derails.
Yeah, this is the hardest part.
Just weeks after that backstage proposal, on July 22, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne tragically passes away at the age of 76.
The timing is catastrophic. What we have to analyze here is the sheer psychological impossibility of processing those two distinct events simultaneously.
Yeah, how do you even do that?
You don't, really. You have the forward-looking optimism, the adrenaline, the oxytocin of a new engagement, colliding instantly with the paralyzing backward-looking finality of death.
I need to push back on this a little bit, though.
Okay, sure.
Because from the outside looking in, people might ask, well, if they have 23 years of bedrock, shouldn't he be the exact person she leans on?
That's what people assume, yeah.
Like, why does grief fracture a bond that is historically that tight? Shouldn't a tragedy bring them closer together?
It is a really common assumption, but it fundamentally misinterprets the actual mechanics of profound grief.
How so?
Well, grief of that magnitude doesn't just make you sad. It is a physiological override. It drains the battery you need to care about anything else.
Just survival mode.
Exactly. The bandwidth required to sustain a romantic partnership, especially a new engagement where you're expected to be planning a wedding, discussing the future, being emotionally available, it's massive.
Right.
When you are drowning in the acute stages of mourning the patriarch of your family, your brain is flooded with cortisol. You barely have the bandwidth to survive the day, let alone nurture a romantic dynamic.
So you're saying it's less about the relationship itself failing and more about her emotional bandwidth completely flatlining.
Precisely.
Like, you can't be expected to plan a seating chart for a wedding when you can barely process the reality that your father won't be there to walk you down the aisle.
That's exactly it. The external expectations of what an engaged couple should be doing become this immense, suffocating weight. And the reporting from our sources points exactly to this struggle.
The timeline gets rough here.
It does. As we move into early 2026, the cracks start to become visible. They appeared together at the Grammy Awards in February, but TMZ began reporting that the relationship had developed a real hot and cold dynamic.
Okay, let's stop on that phrase for a second. Hot and cold. Tabloids throw that term around a lot to imply immaturity or drama.
Glad you, yeah.
But if you've known someone for over 2 decades, shouldn't you be well past the petty hot and cold phase? To me, I read that not as relationship drama, but as the literal push and pull of the grieving process.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, one day you desperately need to be held and comforted, and the very next day you're so overstimulated by pain that you can't stand to be perceived by anyone.
That is a highly accurate read on the situation. Trauma frequently regresses our emotional regulation.
Yeah.
The hot and cold pattern, TMZ reported, is a classic symptom of a partnership buckling under the weight of external trauma. The partner who is grieving becomes unpredictable because their internal emotional state is entirely unpredictable.
And to make an impossible situation infinitely worse, Kelly wasn't allowed to navigate this unpredictable grief in private.
No, she wasn't.
She had to do it on a global stage. Just last month at the Brit Awards, Kelly and her mother Sharon accepted a posthumous Lifetime Achievement Award on behalf of Ozzy.
Right. Which should have been beautiful.
It was designed to be a moment of honor. Instead, she was subjected to an avalanche of cruel internet trolls body-shaming her appearance.
Which brings a whole new layer of toxicity into the equation. You have a woman actively mourning her father, stepping onto a public stage to honor his legacy, and a vocal segment of the internet decides to dissect her physical appearance instead of acknowledging her humanity.
We used the analogy of the house built on bedrock earlier, but dealing with this public scrutiny requires a completely different lens. It's like trying to perform delicate open-heart surgery in the middle of a busy, loud intersection. The public scrutiny actively infects the private healing process.
That's a great way to put it.
Kelly didn't stay silent, though. She fiercely defended herself online. We have the quote here. She wrote, "There is a special kind of cruelty in harming someone who is clearly going through something. Kicking me while I'm down, doubting my pain, spreading my struggles as gossip, and turning your back when I need support and love most."
Wow.
She stated she was going through the hardest time in her life and shouldn't have to defend herself while being dehumanized. And honestly, just reporting on this, it's clear she was at a breaking point.
The phrasing she uses there, dehumanized, is critical. If we look at the mechanics of what's happening, the pressure is compounding from every conceivable angle.
Right.
She had the internal pressure of profound grief, the relational pressure of an engaged partnership that is suddenly hot and cold, and the external toxic pressure of public shaming.
It's just too much.
It creates a completely unsustainable environment for anyone, let alone a public figure trying to maintain her sobriety while raising a toddler.
And ultimately, the environment proved to be too much. By March 2026, the dam breaks. TMZ and the Daily Mail both report that Kelly and Sid actually split, quote, weeks ago. The engagement is officially off.
Yeah. The sources were very clear that the split occurred during this incredibly difficult period of grief. The reports indicate that they genuinely tried to make it work, heavily prioritizing the well-being of their 3-year-old son, Sidney, but they ultimately decided they had to go their separate ways.
And right around the time the news of the split breaks, Kelly does something highly symbolic.
That tattoo.
Yes, she gets a new tattoo. She posted footage of herself in London getting a ribcage tattoo. Now, the sources differ slightly on the visual. The Mirror describes it as a bright orange star, while Tyler reports it as an orange lily.
Interesting.
But both outlets note a crucial detail. The new ink is placed right next to a pre-existing Peter Pan tattoo.
The juxtaposition of those images is so striking. Peter Pan is the universal symbol of never growing up, of suspended reality.
Right.
Placing a new symbol, whether a star or a lily, which both represent growth, navigation, and the passage of time right next to it, feels like an acknowledgement of a harsh transition into a very adult, very painful reality.
Later in the episode, we'll talk about what this means for their future, but here's where it gets really interesting right now. It's the cryptic quote she posted alongside the tattoo footage that set the internet on fire.
Oh yeah, this quote.
She wrote, "I am in love with this sentence. Forgive yourself for not knowing earlier what only time could teach."
It's such a powerful statement. How do you interpret what time taught her in this specific scenario?
Well, I don't think time taught her that Sid was a bad person or the quote-unquote wrong guy. They have 23 years of evidence proving he's a good guy.
Exactly.
To me, I think time taught her that you simply cannot force a romantic dynamic during a traumatic event, no matter how much shared history you rely on. Maybe time taught her that timing is actually everything. Am I off base there?
Not at all. I think you're hitting on the core realization. The quote begins with the instruction to forgive yourself. That explicitly implies she was carrying guilt.
Guilt about the breakup.
Likely guilt over not being able to sustain the energy required for the engagement, or guilt over realizing that stepping back from the relationship was the only viable way she could survive her grief.
That makes a lot of sense.
What time taught her is that shifting the boundaries of a 23-year friendship into a romantic relationship fundamentally altered the dynamic in ways that couldn't hold up to the acute trauma of losing her father.
Which brings us to the aftermath. Where do Kelly and Sid stand right now? According to the reporting, the split was a mutual decision. A source told the Daily Mail that Kelly has endured a massive amount over the past year, but despite everything, she remains sober and is now focusing entirely on herself and her role as a mother to Sidney.
We really need to pause and highlight that detail regarding her sobriety.
Yeah, that's huge.
Grief is historically one of the most powerful triggers for relapse. The fact that she is navigating the devastating loss of her father, the highly public cancellation of her wedding, and an onslaught of toxic public scrutiny, all while successfully maintaining her sobriety. It requires an immense, almost unfathomable level of strength.
Right. Culturally, we are so conditioned to view a canceled wedding as a massive failure, but looking at the mechanisms at play here, hitting the brakes on this engagement might actually be her biggest victory.
I completely agree.
It is the ultimate act of self-preservation.
Absolutely. Recognizing that you do not have the emotional capacity to be a healthy present partner and choosing to proactively pause the relationship rather than force it until it breaks irreparably in a way that damages your sobriety, that is profound maturity.
Yeah.
Separating to protect her health and to ensure she is a stable mother for her child is a testament to incredible self-awareness.
And speaking of pausing, TMZ reported a detail that adds a major twist to the narrative.
The open door.
Yes. Their sources noted that because of Kelly and Sid's deeply rooted history, the door might not be entirely shut on a reconciliation in the future. The phrase the insider used was that the future is uncertain, but the possibility is still very much there.
Which circles us right back to the bedrock we discussed at the very beginning. You cannot just erase a quarter century of history with a press release.
You really can't.
They share a child, they share a deeply interwoven family history, and they clearly share a foundational love. When the immediate blinding dust of this acute grief finally settles, they may find that the foundation of their friendship is still entirely intact beneath the rubble.
It almost feels like they just needed to aggressively de-escalate the pressure.
Yeah, take the heat off.
Remove the heavy title of fiancé, remove the looming, exhausting logistical pressure of planning a wedding, and just figure out how to exist in this new, painful reality where Ozzy is gone.
Exactly that. They are currently living in the immediate aftermath of an emotional earthquake. You don't try to decorate the house while the aftershocks are still violently shaking the walls.
Wow.
Yeah. You step outside, you focus on survival, you make sure your child is safe, and you wait for the ground to finally stop moving.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We've traced a journey that started in the loud, chaotic backstage world of Ozfest in 1999.
All those years ago.
We followed a 23-year friendship that slowly blossomed into a profound romance, the birth of a child, and a beautiful engagement that took place at the very closing of a legendary musical era.
And we broke down the mechanisms of how that absolute peak was instantly followed by the devastating loss of Ozzy Osbourne, creating a storm of grief and public pressure that ultimately forced Kelly and Sid to step back to protect themselves.
It leaves us with a lot to process. I want to leave you, the listener, with this final thought to mull over. We've talked extensively today about the internal pressure of grief and the external toxicity of the tabloids. But it makes you wonder, in an era where we document and broadcast every single high and low on social media, does the sheer expectation of public performance actually rob us of our ability to privately heal?
That's the real question.
If you have to issue statements about your grief, defend your physical appearance, and explain your breakup to the entire world, do you ever get the space to just, break down?
It's a phenomenal question. It challenges us to look at how modern visibility actively interrupts the human need for invisible, quiet recovery.
Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next on our feed. You've been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in to today's deep dive, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.